with a falsehood, you're faced with two options. You can accept it or you can reject it. The basis upon which we take one of these actions is a product of our critical thinking capabilities and a desire to know what is true instead of confirming our bias. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. On Brainstorm, we choose the hard truths over the comforting lies. Reason, compassion, skepticism. This is the Brainstorm Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Brainstorm Podcast, Skeptic Studio, the interview portion of the Brainstorm Podcast, where we talk to a variety of folks with the intent to spread critical thinking, compassion, and skepticism. I'm Cory, and my panel tonight are Rene. Hello. Lisa.
Hi.
Dan.
Hello.
And the always amazing Dave doing sound.
Being amazing.
That's right. We're broadcasting live from Roman Empire Studios in Regina, Saskatchewan, and today is November 23rd, 2018. Tonight's guest is Dr. Jen Gunter, a prolific blogger and expert in women's health who has been tackling pseudoscience since 2011. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I guess...
I'm so excited you're here. I'm so excited. Like,
we'll
usually
just let Lisa take it.
We have these guests, and I'm like, never heard of you. And all you guys are like, I'm so excited to meet you. And I'm like, I never heard of you. And I'm like, we have Jen Gunter today.
Is this how I looked when Dusty Smith showed up?
Yeah, I'm like, never heard of him, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just a girl from the peg, right? So
it's all good. We're just really happy to have you.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I guess something I'm interested in is how you got started writing about like pseudoscience and like tackling things like that.
Sure. So, my whole sort of foray into online stuff started with my own health stuff, which I think is how it happens for a lot of people. So I had kids that were born really prematurely and they had a lot of health problems. And like everybody else, I ended up looking online for things. And my kids had a lot of really serious problems. My son who, they were born at 26 weeks. They weighed, about 800 grams each. And they were in the hospital for a long time. And one of my sons, also on top of it, had a serious heart defect that needed surgery, and he had lung disease. So it was really complex. And I had a lot of trouble sorting stuff out online. And I thought, my God, if it's this hard for me as a doctor, what's it like for everybody else, right? So when my kids got a little bit healthier, I decided, that I'd start trying to write some stuff, to clean up my little corner of the internet. And I really kind of started because I was shocked at all the anti-vaccine stuff because I had these children who were really vulnerable to vaccine preventable diseases. My son had been in the ICU with influenza pneumonia twice, despite being vaccinated. But when you're like him and you have all those medical conditions, it's a whole different ballgame. So that's how I got into sort of the pseudoscience part, because I just couldn't believe that people still were falling for the anti-vaccine stuff. And then I just kind of decided that maybe I would try to clean up my little corner of the internet. And, here I am still swinging my bat.
Thank God you're there too, right? I mean, it is hard. Like I've read your blog a lot, and we also had Amy Tudor on. Like, and I found her really useful when I was pregnant. Like, it's just in terms of like finding, because I don't want to read something overly technical. But if I want to read something reliable, but what is, what I mean? How do you know what's reliable and what's it's really hard as a non-physician out there to navigate.
Yeah, and it's really hard. I mean, most people can sort out the super extreme, but the problem is that it's really hard to sort out. A lot of websites have some valid information, but also they have some information that's really bad. And so when it's mixed together, it's really difficult to sort out. So there's that, but also being on websites that have bad information can expose you to medical conspiracy theories. And the more you see that stuff, the more you kind of get contaminated by it. There's something like over a third of the population in the States believes in a medical conspiracy theory. So
wow.
That's pretty significant.
As a doctor, does that piss you off? Because I work in cancer care, and nothing pisses me off more than the thought that what we do day in, day out, and we work so hard doing, is we're somehow part of some vast conspiracy. Like that, like as though all of us could somehow agree to do this. And I don't know, like it just like, with all that we do for our patients, to have that come out, it just really makes me angry.
I think I'm not angry at the people who believe it, because the stuff is presented in such a way that it really looks like the truth, but I'm very angry at the people who promote it. And especially there's a lot of physicians who do, and there's a lot of people who, are obviously know better, who are promoting it. And those are the people I get. For example, there's a physician who promotes the idea that AIDS is a conspiracy theory from Big Pharma.
Right.
And when I was a medical student, we were holding hands of men who were dying from AIDS because we didn't have any treatments. So, to hear that, it's so disrespectful. And, was that just to sell your supplements? I mean, so I think that it's hard for people to sort the wheat from the chaff. And so the people who are falling victim to it, I feel bad that they've been suckered in, but the people that I'm angry at are the people that are actively promoting it.
You practice like actively clinically, right?
I do work. Yeah.
So what do you see most commonly in your clinic, in terms of what?
Well, I think that what.
Well, no, sorry, I wasn't going to ask a personal. Sorry, I was going to ask what you see most commonly in terms of what people present with that they don't necessarily need to. Like, for example, I'm thinking like in cancer, we see so many breast cancer patients who decide to do some holistic thing, and then they come in with some fungating 3 years later, right? I hate seeing that. It drives me. It makes my skin crawl when I read that in the notes. I'm just wondering if you have.
Well, it's always hard to know, I think, which is the most common. But I think that just this whole idea that supplements are a thing, that's kind of very pervasive in women's health. And so to get people to sort of understand that there isn't some supplement that's going to fix their hormones or balance their hormones, or there isn't some special hormone balancing diet. I would say that that's kind of a universal sort of theme in women's healthcare, this idea that you can balance your hormones. So first of all, your hormones are never in balance. They're different morning, noon, night. They change all the time, which is why testing levels is ridiculous, and it's a big grift when people do it. But this idea, and it's so common and it's repeated by so many people, that's really very pervasive. I think that if you talk to a lot of OBGYNs, that's a really common thing. And the one that makes me really sad is our lack of uptake with the HPV vaccine. We have the ability to prevent cervical cancer, and not just the cancer, but which is very important, but also all the testing. There's a lot of women who have pre-invasive disease and then they get treated and they don't get cancer, which is great. But we could prevent all of that too, all the repeat pap smears, all the pain of biopsies, and never mind anal cancer and, head and neck cancer. So there's all these other things. So, it's a real tragedy. So I think that's the other area that it's just really sad.
Yeah, but the problem is that if you give teenagers HPV vaccine, that makes them have sex. I don't know if you knew that. It's a fact.
All right, we're back.
All right.
Okay.
So, hold on, Lisa was making a joke.
Yeah.
Oh, my joke's... No, it's over now.
Yeah,
I'm not doing it again. I
passed.
refuse. No more jokes.
No, come on, say it. We can pick right back up.
Can the sound tech ask a question? Is that a thing?
I think that's better than jokes.
Go ahead.
Because I just had a baby. Well, my wife just had a baby. Anyway, I didn't have the baby. I was very supportive, but no. You talk about supplement culture, and I think that's like one of the things that's really kind of perturbed me a little bit going through it again. Is it just seems like everybody has all these different supplement ideas about everything. Are there any of them that are useful? Because I mean, some of them were recommended by actual doctors and stuff too, right? So, I mean,
well, prenatal vitamins certainly. So, prenatal folic acid reduces the incidence of neural tube defects. So that's been shown. Anything outside of folic acid is probably questionable, although iron can also be very beneficial. Okay. So since it can be hard for people to find a good source, a prenatal vitamin before, especially preconceptually, it certainly reduces the incidence of birth defects.
Okay.
So, but for somebody who's not trying to get pregnant, who's otherwise healthy, who doesn't have, a vitamin deficiency, supplements are really of no value. And that's a difficult message for people to get across. People, especially in America, they love their supplements.
And is that just because a lot of us are kind of like honest people and we like to believe that other people are honest too? So just the sheer fact that they're sold and marketed in such a way that we just tend to want to believe that?
Oh, I think that's a very Canadian approach.
It is, yeah.
I was thinking it's more along the lines of how often do people take the supplements because they want to take that, feel like they're in control. If I take all these supplements, I'm that much more in control of my own health, where they don't like being told that it's kind of useless or a waste.
I mean, I think part of the problem is that things like supplements make people feel like they belong to a group. And it's not much different than in many religions. There are, things that you have to give up or things that you have to do, right? Like you eat kosher or you only eat fish on Fridays or whatever, right? So you have some type of nutritional thing that is aligned with your religion. And so I think for a lot of people, supplements are almost like that, right? It's something that you follow. So when you tell somebody that, gosh, there's a supplement, that supplement isn't going to help you at all, maybe they say they're taking it for health, but deep down it's sort of, they're aligning with a group. And so I think you're not only telling them health information, you're telling them that group that they're aligned with might not be right. And that's hard for someone to take because they think that you're criticizing them. So it has to be approached in a really careful way. Otherwise, your people aren't going to hear the message. So scientific literacy, I think, is a super important thing to help people make those decisions. But it's a huge problem because not only are people taking all these supplements that aren't needed, but many of them are adulterated and they contain things like, blood thinners or antidepressants or lead or dirt from somebody's backyard, right?
I know when I used to take a lot of supplements for, shortcuts for bodybuilding, they always promised they would work in the magazines. And
sure, supplements for bodybuilding, Cory.
We used to really complain because something would get banned in Canada and they'd still be able to sell it in the States. And we'd be like, wow, we got all these rules stopping us from taking these things.
Right. Right. Well, those Canadian rules, I heard that you can't call anything cola unless it's like got a dark color to it or something. Oh, so,
freedom.
So that people know what they're getting.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
I don't know.
Well, it can't be caffeinated if it's light, right? Like Mountain Dew can't be caffeinated here, I believe.
Right. Yeah, Mountain Dew doesn't have caffeine in Canada. Yeah. So what is the point of
yellow sugary goodness.
Well, I drink Diet Mountain Dew, so I don't even get the sugar.
Oh my God. Yo, Jesus, Cory.
What is that?
It's good.
So with respect to supplements, could it also be because they're relatively easy to take? Like, it's easier to take a supplement than to adopt an exercise regime or change your diet, or it gets and I think there's also the fallacy that the supplements can't hurt you. Like, well, it can't hurt if I take it every day, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it. I think people think that they're taking it so they don't have to be as careful with their diet, and of course that's not true at all. And so, and I also think that we don't teach a lot about nutrition, in schools. So then it's very easy for people to think that this is going to be helpful for them.
Yeah.
So it's a huge, it's such a hard thing to undo, but medical myths are really hard to undo. The classic example is the 8 glasses of water a day, right? There's no big water pushing that. And we can't get people to disbelieve it. The New York Times has debunked it a couple of times. Many, news sites have taken it apart. I've taken it apart. We all know where the myth comes from and people don't want to believe it.
So the real answer is 9, right?
8 glasses of water a day.
The real answer is 9, right?
Yeah, 9 glasses.
Yeah.
It's 9?
Yeah.
And what is a glass? It's not even specific. Glass isn't even a unit of measurement.
Yeah,
no, not necessarily.
8 cups of water a day. Are we going to debate what a
cup
and a glass is?
I always tell people we're well designed. You should drink when you're thirsty. We have thirst mechanisms and baroreceptors and chemoreceptors, and it really, your body really knows what it's doing. That's the most natural thing, right? Is to rely on your thirst.
Yeah.
But so if we can't get people to stop believing 8 glasses of water a day, which doesn't really have any financial investment behind it, think about how hard it is to get people to disbelieve these other things.
So in a sense, this leads into something you write about a lot, is the Goop website. That seems to be, like there's almost like a cult-like following to that now too. And
I mean, well, celebrities sell things, right? So that's why it's hard. I mean, they're used to sell everything, like all the advertisements on television, and so celebrities sell. But I mean, I think Goop is a symptom of what's going on, and it's just something that they've capitalized on well. Mostly because at the beginning they were very invested in saying all this really outrageous stuff, because that got them a lot of press. So. But that also exposed a lot of people to medical conspiracy theories too. So there's a really significant dark side. Never mind the people who might have bought the coffee enema machine and, got a rectal burn or something.
I remember covering the coffee enemas back when they were a new thing, and it was like really weird.
I mean, that's been debunked over and over. I mean, there's Facebook groups dedicated to coffee enemas.
Like, was it ever bunked? Like, to have to be debunked? Like, was it ever well accepted? Oh no, it's actually debunked. Like, no. Like, I mean, I always feel so like, who are these people? But then once in a while, a Facebook friend, will post some Goop thing, and I'm like, but I'm so what? I thought you were a human with a brain. I'm so confused. Like, I don't understand. I'm sorry. I'm terrible. I'm belittling to people who believe this stuff. You're much better than me.
Well, I think it's really important to figure out what leads people there, because if we want to lead them away from it, then I think that we kind of have to understand what they're missing in medicine, or what they're missing in society, or what message they aren't hearing. Because obviously there's a reason why people are turning to that and spending a lot of money and really exposing themselves to risk. I mean, so it's important for us as doctors to really try to figure that out, I think, so we can help offer an alternative. But a lot of times, I mean, up until very recently, doctors haven't been involved in it. So people we're writing all this online stuff, and there was nobody challenging it. So there's nobody to turn to sort of point out that was a bad thing to do.
Do you think more doctors should be engaging in the kind of work that you're doing then?
Yeah, well, I think people need to do what they're comfortable with, and a lot of doctors aren't comfortable speaking out, and that's fine. There's, we need people doing research, we need people doing, all aspects of medical care. But I think you have to meet people where they are. And if people are online getting information or getting misinformation or even disinformation, that you have to meet them there. They want an alternative. I think it's great that people are researching health information online. The problem is many times the first links they're coming to are really bad sites. And so wouldn't it be great if every time somebody Googled something, they got perfect medical information? That would be amazing, because we know the first piece of information someone's exposed to is probably the most important. That's going to set the tone for what they believe in. So I do think that the more people that get involved in helping people learn medical information is good, and there's lots of different ways to do it.
Do you know of any initiative there? That would be an interesting initiative to have like a high placement in a Google search for certain medical terms that from like a reliable source. Like, for example, like where I go to for any medical information I need, but I cheat. I work at a hospital. We have a subscription to a website called uptodate.com. And it's basically, it's like a Wikipedia, but written by doctors. Okay. Like it's usually written by 2 or 3 doctors who are an expert in that field, and there's references. But it's like, it's a summary, and nothing will be too far out there, right? Because you can even find crazy out there articles by actual physicians, right? I mean,
gosh, yes.
Right. So, I mean, it's really hard just because it's an MD doesn't mean it's a good article, right? So UpToDate is, I personally, so it would be nice if there was something like that available to the public, because that site's subscription, it costs a lot of money. My hospital pays for it.
But there are. I think that's why it's really important to teach people health literacy. So, for example, in the States, we have the National Library of Medicine. Certainly, none of the articles are as up to date, but they're really good places to start. So, but that's not where people go to. People just go to a search engine and they put in a name. They put, and then they go to the first thing. And obviously, we know that the Google algorithm is nothing to do with, what's the most valid news source, right, and more to do with some complex combination of economics and popularity that I don't understand. But so
that's right.
Teaching people that would be important, right? Teaching them how to look online. And so that's something that I do a lot of lecturing on is, actually teaching people how to research health information online.
Oh, interesting. I'm thinking I wonder if, for example, another place that I go for information is let's say I have a question, like a medical question about my son. I'll go to see if the American Academy of Pediatrics has like a white paper on it or a guideline or a statement, something that's like most physicians agree this, and this is where the controversy is, and this is where we don't argue about anymore. Like that's what I need to know, right? But I don't know how many like organizations like that, how many have their such papers publicly available.
Most of them do. So, for example, if you wanted to know women's health, what I would tell people to do is to either type in ACOG, which is American College of OBGYN, or SOGC, which is the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists of Canada. Mm-hmm. Both of them have excellent information for patients. And if you just put those initials first and then whatever subject you are interested in, it's going to take you to something on their site. And you're going to get a wealth of information, and most of them have excellent patient portals with good information. Mm-hmm. So, that's just all part of health literacy. But if you end up on a site that sells supplements, you're not going to get any of that information. And that's one of the first things I tell people is you can't get your health information from the same site as someone who sells you product.
Right.
I mean, I just find the internet's terrible. Even take a really this is not health related, but it's a really good news organization like The Atlantic, right? A reasonable, real news organization. You can click on one of those articles and they will have terrible banner ads through everything. You can't even just say, don't believe anything on a website with terrible banner ads. No, not necessarily. Sometimes the New York Times has terrible banner ads. You know what I mean?
Especially if you aren't subscribed,
I don't know.
Yeah, and the advertising is very slick. A lot of times it looks like it's part of the article, right? It's so well done. There's a couple of times I've been reading things on, valid news sites, and I'm like, wait, how is that? And it's the, the ad has almost been part of the content. It was so close to what the article was about, but it wasn't. And you think, wow, you gotta really pay attention. Advertising agencies know what they're doing.
How long have you been in the U.S.?
I came to the States in 95. So a while.
So I'm just wondering if you've noticed that things have been changing. Have people is it just the internet becoming more prominent, so then it's easier to dupe people, or is the education changing in some way that people are asking different kinds of questions? I'm just wondering what your sense of that is.
Well, I think we went so quickly into sort of this age of information with the internet, that we kind of all of a sudden within this very short period of time had this sort of glut exposure to information, right? Mm-hmm. If you think about how long did we have the telephone before we moved on to television, right? We had it we had that form of communication for a really long time. And we had just television for a really long time, and even fax machines. But each sort of, I think, new way that we're communicating is getting, we have it shorter and shorter. So we have a harder time adapting, I think, to how to use it. That's kind of my own theory. And even within the internet, right, we've gone from, it only being Facebook for communicating to, Facebook, and now it's all Instagram, right? So we're changing how we consume information so rapidly that I think it's hard for things to kind of settle out and then, get to a place where it's something that we can all use in a really, I guess, effective way. That's why, I don't study that at all. That's just my own personal theory. I could be totally off base, but it's just the way that information, it's like a fire hose, right? And we haven't figured out how to drink from the fire hose, and we're trying to, but
everything's trying to put our mouth on the end.
Changing. Right. But it's now we have multiple fire hoses. So it's just harder. I think that we'll all figure it out eventually, or we'll all just start believing conspiracy theories. I don't know. I hope not. But that's my own personal theory, is that it's just coming so quickly, and that we sort of moved through the age of information into the age of disinformation.
In a way, there's always been con artists, right? There's always been people willing to, sell, to bullshit about something in order to sell something, right? That's always been, and it's just, the internet just gives them a new tool.
Right. If you think about, 100 years ago, well, the guy had to load up his wagon and go 80 miles to the next town. So, news didn't travel very quickly. But people have been preying on people, other people with the exact same complaints for at least 100 years. There was, you guys all know about the goat testicles, right?
No, please. I assumed goats had testicles, but that's all I know.
Yeah. So there was a guy, and I think his name was John Binkley in Kansas, and he made it through, I think, second or third year medical school and then dropped out and moved to Kansas and started basically a practice where he implanted goat testicles into men for the symptoms of loss of vigor, low libido, all the same things that we're telling women are, quote, quote, hormonal problems now. So exactly the same symptom complex, but aimed at men. So hard to say that's the patriarchy, right? And implanted goat testicles into men. And of course, many of them got sepsis and had horrible complications, as you might expect would happen if you had an extra goat testicle or two shoved in your scrotum.
I was going to ask, where did he implant them? In the scrotum?
I think so. Scrotum, groin, wherever, whatever, who cares? And so he...
yeah, ultimately it doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter, right? And so he was very smart. Yeah. He owned a local radio station. He paid off a lot of politicians. I mean, he didn't have a medical license. He was doing this, and people were too embarrassed about their complications to complain about it, because who's going to admit it sounded like you did at the time, but now you're trying to tell the police, your husband died because he had goat testicles implanted. I don't know. So anyway, he eventually got brought down by this reporter who sort of dogged him for 20 or 30 years. But people have been falling victim to this. See, it's, the same old thing and so that was 100 years ago. And we're hearing many of the same words, many of the same phrases used, now just aimed at women. I'm sure they're aimed at men too. That's just not my wheelhouse.
I bet you for the first 19 years before that reporter finally brought him down, everybody said it was fake news.
Probably. People thought the reporter was crazy, that this guy was revolutionary, so exactly the same thing, right? So I always think about the reporter that brought him down, and I think, careful, Gwyneth.
That's right. Yeah, that's good.
So, one day someone will write a book about my dogged pursuit of goop and how a single unfunded physician brought down a celebrity's quasi-wealth health and wellness industry.
I don't understand how that woman sleeps at night. I don't get it.
Oh, my neither. How does Dr. Oz sleep?
Yeah, piles of money.
Nope, I don't understand that either.
Yeah, well, I'm sure she sleeps on earthing sheets, right? Grounding sheets.
Right.
Grounding or whatever, right? You plug your sheets in and it helps the electrons from the earth flow into you better.
That's right.
Nah, I doubt she buys her own crap. She probably sleeps on a giant pile of money. That's what she does.
Probably.
It's like Smog the dragon.
Yeah. Something...
exactly. Pile of supplements. Just like gold.
About, I don't know, must be almost a year and a half ago, we covered a book that talked about how the medical industry has in the past failed women. And we were bantering back and forth about the idea of is this the cause of why things like goop are popular now? I was wondering if you had some thoughts on that.
Well, I wouldn't say that the medical industry or that medicine has failed women. I actually disagree with that completely. I think that the problem is everything in society has been patriarchal up until very recently, right? So, up until, if you wanted to open a bank account in the 1970s, you were called a little lady, and why wasn't your husband there? And, so everything has been, I would say, part of that same problem up until recently. But yes, up until recently, women have not been included in studies. They have been, all the studies were done on, white men in their 40s and 50s for a variety of reasons. Partly because women weren't considered important, which is absolutely wrong, but also partly because female subjects have hormone fluctuations that are different, and you can't control for that in a study situation. So there also are some other reasons. Now, that's not an explanation for why it's okay to exclude women. That means that you have to design better studies and do it right. So you can make the science applicable to everybody. But I think that we've had few women who were researchers and leaders who could point those things out. So I think that everything has been changing very rapidly. And I would say in the last 10 to 15 years, I think we've seen really some great strides for new research and really making sure that we're including women in ways that we should. I still think there's ways to go. And I believe that there are tons of gaps in medicine. Medicine misses listening to people. They miss helping people out with health literacy. I think that's across the board. And I think men suffer in many ways too, differently probably than women do. And they're probably preyed on for different, because of different gaps. But celebrities don't fill those gaps and they exploit them, right? Yeah. So nothing that they're doing is helping us close those gaps. They're not saying, hey, you haven't researched this area. Let's give you money to help that out. What they're doing is saying, hey, take the supplement. So, what is more damaging to women is to sell them useless products that have never been studied that they don't need, right? Like that's the most patriarchal thing possible.
Under the guise of empowerment. Right,
exactly. So there have been lots of problems with medicine. I mean, women are still not asked about, their sexual lives. They're not asked about, sexual problems. There's all kinds of problems uniquely that affect women. And obviously I only see women, so I can only, speak from that perspective. But, I think that medicine is really trying to catch up and really trying to acknowledge that there have been these big gaps that are partly medicine's fault, but also partly society's fault, So, I mean, when I was a kid in the early 70s, every time I said I wanted to be a doctor, every single person said to me, well, you really want to be a nurse. And that's nothing, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a nurse. Being a nurse is amazing, but nobody would listen to me. Even my own mother said, well, no, you shouldn't go into medicine. That's too long. That's too hard. And so, that was just, 40 years ago. So, I think that we've come a long way where we can now say women can be anything that they want to be and they should try to be anything they want to be. But that wasn't the case when I was in junior high school.
When I was just thinking while you were saying that, my wife was giving birth here a couple weeks ago here. When she had to have an intervention after the fact, I don't need to go into all the graphic details, but as I was sitting there and all the medical professionals came in, it was actually nothing but women, which was, I actually felt really like it was kind of this cool, not miraculous, but I guess, awe-inspiring thing to watch, where there were just so many professionals in the room and they were just so good at what they do. Like the anesthesiologist was in there, like they were doing all kinds of crazy procedures and it was just, they were efficient and they were calm and they were detailed. And so, I mean, I'm super grateful that more people are in the field now that have that kind of ability, regardless of what their gender is or what they're like. Yeah, there's just, it was just something incredible to watch. I just wanted to mention that, but.
Yeah. Well, I think also too, I mean, when I don't believe that you have to have a medical condition to be a good physician. I mean, there's many amazing cancer doctors, right, who've never had cancer and they're fantastic. Sure. But I do think that when you're talking about, how women hear information in the office or how the information that they want to get or how they want to be addressed. And when you have no women that are studying that, it's pretty hard, because it's just, they don't bring that perspective. So I think that many aspects of women's healthcare suffered because it was all looked through the lens of, a man. And I'm sure that, many women who, the few women who were professors in the 1960s and probably even the 1970s, I mean, that's how they learned it as well. And people learned to toe the line or you didn't get ahead. So things are changing and that's a really good thing. And I'm hoping that, we can extend that diversity to all aspects of medicine because, we know that women who show up in the emergency department are less likely to have their complaints that could be a heart attack taken as seriously as a man, right? So those discrepancies exist everywhere and we have to work on that everywhere. But you know what, it's not just medicine. I mean, when I have somebody to come work on my house, I have to be super specific. And there are times when I've had to have a guy come over because otherwise I've been taken advantage of.
Oh, totally.
So, it extends everywhere or at the mechanic. And so, it's also a problem everywhere, I think. Wow. Yeah. I'm trying to solve the patriarchy in an hour.
It's tough.
I'm trying.
After that heavy subject, I was like, let's go somewhere. What's the worst idea that Gwyneth Paltrow has pushed? I'm just curious from your
what's
perspective.
the worst one?
What's the absolute worst one? I know that's a long list, but
well, define definition of worst, right? So do you think that it's do you think that, like, I would say that the thing that I find the most offensive is the idea that they gave an AIDS denialist a national platform. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's possibly like the most offensive thing that somebody could do. I would say, or publishing a blog post that says bras cause breast cancer. Like, that's cruel. Like, so those are the things, those things are pretty cruel, and those bother me, I think, a lot. So I think those are the two that stick in my mind the most, because they're just so pointless. Like, they're just, it just seems to me like pointless cruelty.
What's the most dangerous thing that Goop has advocated? I mean, if somebody stops wearing bras, I mean, it's not that dangerous. It's just sort of stupid. Right. I mean, like, what's the most, I mean, coffee enema does not sound good.
Yeah, coffee enema does not sound good, does it? I think that's probably up there from a risk perspective. I mean, certainly, rectal trauma, anal burns. There's cases of, perforated colons with that type of thing. So potential for dangers, absolutely.
Or what? Or any sort of alternative treatment for a serious condition, right? Like,
right.
Jade. I don't even know if they've said that jade eggs that cure cervical cancer. I don't even know if they've said that, but as an example, something like that would be terrible.
Yeah. Well, we know that. We know also that jade eggs aren't even ancient or Chinese, so there's that too. So the lies,
they're not even eggs.
Yeah. There's just a hunk of rock that some chick's trying to sell you. That's basically it. No, I think that the things that are the most dangerous are the exposure to medical conspiracy theories. So, in a lot of there's like hints about, or not even hints, overt statements about like mercury in your fillings or fluoride being a problem. And these are the things that have, potential, if somebody goes and they have all their fillings removed, or, we're seeing, for example, even in Canada, right? Like, didn't Calgary vote to take the fluoride out of their water?
Right.
And and so,
Regina, I don't think fluoridates, do they?
Oh, really?
I don't know about that.
We never got on board.
I don't think we ever did here.
Oh, really? Yeah. You're still in the 1800s there with our water supply. But we had fluoride in Winnipeg. Damn it, we're not that far away.
Sometimes I think Saskatchewan is still stuck in 1958.
Well, I feel like fluoride actually would have passed, because we're always like 20 years behind the time. So it actually became uncool before we were able to adopt it, probably, is what happened there.
Probably, yeah.
You're just so far behind.
Yeah, we're just getting bell bottoms here. Like, we're just
the first time around, right? I think that exposure to medical conspiracy theories and that's been shown to be linked with, not getting vaccinated, and also just this exposure to complement this sort of so-called, complementary alternative medicine. We know that, for example, people with cancer who follow those therapies are more likely to have a bad outcome. So that's really harmful.
What do you say your thoughts on, like, the people who try to integrate the quote unquote complementary medicine with like regular medical treatment?
Well, I would say if it works, we call it regular medical treatment.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
If it works, it's medicine. If it doesn't work, then I'm not sure why you're doing it. I mean, I think that's kind of how I look at it. So if something is effective, and especially with a lot of these treatments, people have been doing them for 20, 30 years, much longer. So if they worked, we'd know that by now. Yeah. So I just say if it's effective, we call it medicine.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just did a fact check. I was going to say Regina does not fluoridate, but Saskatoon does.
Well,
really? You mean they're all like hip in Saskatoon?
I don't know. I think it said in 1985 we had a referendum here, and the people voted against fluoridation.
Of course they did.
Yes, they did.
Wow. So were you ahead of the curve or behind the curve? I'm trying to figure out, were you ahead of the anti-fluoride curve or behind on the first wave?
That's
more research needed to find if that which one would
somehow both.
somehow both. Oh,
Wait,
no.
so what? Okay,
but,
no, it's at an 85 they voted.
But, so
sorry, audio. Go ahead.
That's all right. No. I was just going to say, but we're seeing, as more and more communities are taking fluoride out of their water, we're seeing, these, conspiracy theories have effects for everybody. I mean, it's not just like people who believe in Bigfoot, they're not harming anybody. They're just getting together talking about Bigfoot. Yeah. If that's who they want to believe in, that's totally fine. But, they're not voting to take the fluoride out of the water. They just want to believe in Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I heard an interesting lecture on that. So I was at the Skeptics Conference last month, and the guy went to the Bigfoot Society meeting and interviewed a bunch of people, and they're all just like you and me, except they believe in Bigfoot. They weren't any more likely to be anti-vax or anything like that. They're just nice people who just happen to want to believe in Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So
of all the things to target, seems like one of the least harmful.
So you can have, maybe sort of not quite mainstream beliefs and not be hurting anybody else too, right? So, but people who are anti-vaccine, they're going to hurt there was this heartbreaking thread on Twitter the other day about anti-vaccine and, what happened when this young girl who was getting chemo, right, who had a low count, was in the grocery store and was exposed to somebody who had measles. What she had to go through. And then every single kid who she'd sat next to getting chemo had to all be assessed, and they all had to get injection, or they had to be assessed to see if they need injections of something to boost their immune. I mean, just boost their white counts, and they had to do terminal cleanings on all the rooms she was in. And just heartbreaking to see all the steps, the painful steps, and the risk for her and everybody else. And you think, there's such potential for harm.
Yeah, the downstream effects, I guess you could say, is like it gets almost too big to think about.
I was going to say I have zero patience for it. When I lived in Ontario, there was a requirement that if you had your kid registered in a daycare, like a public daycare or a school, you had to prove that they had vaccines. You could get there was exemptions for religious or blah 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 blah. Not many people got it though. It was. I have so little patience for it. I think there should be public policy against it. And fine, you don't want to vaccinate your kids and they can't go to a public school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. I mean, some of the Montessori and Waldorf schools down here, some of them only have 30% vaccination rates.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's pretty, I live in I think it's the most unvaccinated zip code in the United States, or the second most. I know, right? It's pretty maddening.
Where do you live?
I live in Marin County.
Okay.
So it's as anti-vax as you can get. And I mean, so when my kids were in elementary school, because of Oliver's health conditions, I used to say, okay, well, before play dates, are your kids vaccinated? Because they can't come over to play. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
We just had an outbreak here in Sask in the north. Was it? I want to say, what was it? Something that's definitely that you can vaccinate. I can't remember what it was.
Whooping cough?
Maybe it was whooping cough. I think so. I think that's what it was. But
there's been a lot of outbreaks of that.
Yeah.
But the East Coast has got tons of measles right now. I mean, and it's got a significant case fatality rate. It has all kinds of, terrible ramifications. And I mean, it's absolutely frightening that based on, I mean, I think there's always been an anti-vaccine movement that's apparently, even since Edward Jenner, apparently there's always been, if you're going to inject something into people, I mean, there've always been conspiracy theorists, right? Since the beginning of people. I'm sure there was some cave dude who's like, oh, the guys in the cave down there, they're all plotting something. I don't know. But
it's a conspiracy of big fire.
Right, yeah, big fires coming at us, or there's big saber-toothed tiger down the street.
That's right.
There's probably always been. I think it's so common, but the evidence is so clearly there. It's really astonishing to me that people just don't want to believe in the importance of vaccinations.
Is there an irony that, especially with anti-vaxxers, my impression anyways is that it's more affluent or upper middle class type parents who tend to kind of veer that way. Like, it's just, I mean, they have access, they have ability to pay for it. They just choose not to. Like, I find that
it's bizarre.
It's like that Simpsons joke.
Or is that or am I misreading the situation?
I think it's probably different in different countries and even in different areas of the country. I mean, certainly in the States, there's kind of three pockets, right? There's the religious groups that, that are anti-vaccine for a variety of different reasons. There is sort of this elitism of anti-vaccination, which is always fascinating to me, that these people are willing to believe in the science of global warming, but not to believe in the science of vaccine safety. Yeah. So I always find that interesting. But maybe one is hip and one isn't, I don't know. And then there's also the extreme right-wing people who don't want to be told that they need to have something injected in their body, right? Yeah. So there's different kind of overlaps from that standpoint. But there's also people who just, maybe just don't have a lot of scientific literacy. And so the first thing they stumble across online is something bad about a vaccine, and they believe it. And maybe if they'd got the right information at the beginning, they wouldn't be like that. Those are often people you can sway with good arguments. So as long as, you don't polarize it too much. But, I don't know if, in Canada, the anti-vaccine, forces align the same way or not.
I don't know how prominent it is in Canada. I think I have certainly heard public health nurses complain to me that it's difficult to convince some parents to vaccinate their kids. So, anecdotally, I know that there's definitely pockets of it.
Rural Alberta apparently is quite bad for.
The stuff I've seen on Facebook is like discussions. It's more of anti-vax because of bad reactions. It was more the conversation I saw is that, so-and-so's kid had a bad reaction. I'm kind of against vaccines because of that. I'm like, well, I mean, it's possible.
Yeah. I got into an interesting discussion with a listener on our Facebook group, like the Brainstorm Facebook group, because Cory had posted about healthcare workers not getting the flu vaccine every year, or some refusing and having to wear masks, and they don't want to wear a mask. And I work in healthcare, and most of us just go and get it. Like, we just all line up. But I have a few colleagues and just be like, no, I'm not getting it. And I think that they question the efficacy, because some years they kind of get it more right than others. And then, one guy was like, well, I always get the flu after I get the flu vaccine. I'm like, but that's not a thing. That's not like it's just, it's interesting. Even people working in healthcare, people trained, you'll still get a small cohort or like, no, I'm not getting it. Meh. Like, it's just like, okay, like, I just think it's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there definitely are, healthcare workers like that. And it's really interesting because, it's not possible to get the flu from the flu vaccine. So
I told him. He said he knew that, but he still always got sick from it, therefore wouldn't do it. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but I think that's when it gets back to it's almost like a religion, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you're talking about a religious belief or as aligning with a group, that you feel connected with. Like, there are stories of parents who were very anti-vaccine, right? Like really deep in it. Yeah. And then one of their kids, got a horrible complication from a vaccine preventable disease, And so then they secretly get their other kids vaccinated, and they're ostracized from this community that they were part of. And they really feel like a loss, because it's like being excommunicated from your church. So I think that we have to think of, that's an interesting way to think about people who are very strongly anti-vaccine, like that's their community, right? Yep. So if they get vaccinated, they've lost that community, that huge, social network. They socialize with those people. They, align maybe politically with them. So I think that we have to think about that how are we going to help people move away from that?
Yeah, I think this seems to be something that comes up a number of times in various conversations about conspiracy beliefs and religious beliefs and whatnot. And I wonder if there is something that we can do, like to offer a different type of community to people that, I don't know, maybe we can't offer them that community, but
well, that's, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's an area that needs to be researched, and there is some area, for example, some parents will be swayed by being told about, for example, the complications of measles. But some people, it will actually make them become more vaccine hesitant. So it depends how they're coming to their anti-vaccine views. So people who come to being anti-vaccine out of fear, often if you show them pictures of, scary complications from measles, then the position that feels the most comfortable for them is to do nothing. Because when people are afraid, if they make a decision, they think, okay, well, if I do nothing and something bad happens, it was the universe. But if I get my kid vaccinated and something bad happens, then I made that happen.
Right.
So I think that's why we need research. We have to figure out how people come to these views and then figure out, because how we might approach one group of people who are anti-vaccine might be very different than how we need to approach another group. Just like we approach different kinds of, high blood pressure differently. If we think it's, congenital or caused by kidney disease or whatever. I mean, I don't know anything about high blood pressure. I'm a gynecologist. So I'm just kind of making up things that I think might cause high blood pressure. But you get the point, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we have like a similar issue, like with atheism, for example. People always say, well, if somebody's going to be, leave a religious community, like what happens when somebody dies? There's no atheist death ritual. There's no,
right.
Or there's no atheist marriage. There's no,
it's like there's
or wedding. There's no atheist weekly gathering where you, I guess there's this. You can listen to Brainstorm.
It's like we're missing a cultural aspect to our worldviews almost.
Yeah, atheism's a hard one because it's kind of like a nothing. Like it's like, I just don't believe in purple unicorns or God. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's hard to have a negative belief. So, anyways,
it's hard to have a community around a negative belief.
Yeah, but the anti-vaxxers have it. They have this community around not giving a vaccine.
So, I guess it's that shared delusion that I think atheism is lacking. Is it's like I guess I don't know. They don't see it as a shared delusion, but it's somehow that the fact that it is a delusion is what binds them together so strongly. It's almost like the more evidence against it causes them to bind together more tightly to help strengthen their belief against that evidence against them.
Yeah, I think though that your belief can be in the scientific method, and that can bring people together. And I think that rituals are interesting in a lot of ways, and I don't know, a party counts as a ritual, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe we just need to have atheist parties on a regular basis. I don't know. But, the skeptic societies do that. And, I went to Skepticon, and that was I thought that was really a great community, actually. I was really impressed and thought everybody was really nice and kind. And, and I didn't know they had all these skeptic societies in, many different cities, and many of them have, actual halls, just like churches do and things. And they put on, speaker series and,
Yeah, BC Humanists does a really good job of that.
Yeah, humanist societies. And I think there's also naturalist societies and other places that, people can, find community and fellowship in.
I mentioned I was a part of CFI, which is a charitable organization across Canada and in other countries that helps to, fight against pseudoscience, promote community amongst atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, etc. So we host what is supposed to be monthly stuff, but usually ends up being about 4 or 5 times a year that we get people together. But you are right; it's when you do it, it's some of the most fun experiences you can have as a non-believer, just to be in a space like that and know that you're not going to have someone try to hit you over the head with their Bible.
Yeah, I think that for a long time too, people are very, atheists haven't really spoken up, and it's been kind of like the hidden, not religion, but the hidden thing. And I think that people should be whatever they want to be. And it's funny, my kids now are happy people ask them, they're like, well, we're atheists.
Really?
They're like, yeah. So, they've got really good critical thinking skills. And, I've never told them they should believe a certain way or whatever. And, but they asked me, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't believe in any of that. And I'm an atheist. And they thought about it, and they're like, well, I guess we are too. I'm like, okay.
That's funny. How old are your kids?
They're 15 years old.
Okay.
So
teenagers.
Yeah. So, but they've been like that for a while. I mean, it's pretty hard. I mean, once you told them that, there's no such thing as Santa, sort of like the jig's up, right?
Oh man. My son, when my son was 6, he said to me, Susie in my class believes in God. I'm like, okay. He's like, I don't. And I'm like, whatever, kid. Like,
Yeah. Well, it's also good to, I always, tell my kids you got to be respectful of what other people believe, and everybody's got their right to believe what they want to believe, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, I followed that up with be nice to Susie. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, it's but yeah, I was surprised at how infrequent people speak up, or especially in the States, every time, and I don't mention it very often. When I mention, for example, on Twitter that I'm an atheist, I always get these messages from people, oh, thank you for speaking up. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean,
it's a big deal.
Okay. Yeah, I know. It shouldn't be though, right? Like it shouldn't be. It's not a big deal for someone to say that they're a Christian or anything else. So I'm not sure why it shouldn't be as equally as respected. But, in the States, it's very puritanical too. I mean, I have a feeling in Canada, it's probably less of a big deal. Maybe I'm wrong, but.
Yeah, Saskatchewan's still got a lot of that. It's a big deal type stuff going on, but.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I think other places are better.
I'm not comfortable saying, like, at work or whatever, that I'm an atheist. I tend to say I'm not religious. And I feel like 70% of the people at work would also classify themselves that way.
Right.
But people don't, like, I remember that famous monologue by, what's her name? Julia Sweeney? No, is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Letting Go of God. And there's one point where she tells her mom she's an atheist. And her mom's like, Julia, it's like, don't believe in God, that's fine, but becoming an atheist, like, I think the term is like, like supposed to be, I don't know. So I just tend to tell people I'm just not religious, and people know what I mean.
I just ran into someone the other day that was like, so I mentioned I was an atheist, like, you're an atheist. And I said, yeah. And he goes, not an agnostic. And I said, I'm an agnostic atheist. And he goes, what do you mean? And so I had to explain the whole, I said, well, atheism and agnosticism are not answering the same question. One is about whether you believe in, or whether you think the knowledge can actually be known factually, and the other one is whether or not you have a belief in God. And he said, well, I always thought atheist was that you believe there's definitely no God. And I was like, no, it's just that you have no belief in God. And he's like, huh. And it was just interesting how it like totally reframed how he thought about all the other atheists that he had met in his life, because he said he had met one atheist that was just like extremely sure, no, there's definitely no God, anything, and he met a Gnostic atheist, which sometimes makes as much sense as a Gnostic theist.
Well, I think sometimes people think that when you say, you're an atheist, it's like so definitive and so scary, and most people say they're agnostic, so it's kind of like softens it,
right.
And
and fuck that, get off the fence.
I'm never on any fence, as I'm sure you can all tell, and usually if I don't have an opinion, if I'm not hardcore in opinion, I don't usually say anything. So I'm an atheist, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, it's not even that hardcore. It's literally like, I don't believe, based on the evidence that I have right now, if Jesus were to fly down from the heavens and be like, yo, I am real, then we'd, upon examining what drugs we had maybe had that day, we might then conclude that we were previously wrong about that theory.
Well, I think anybody who believes in the scientific method is that's the great thing about science, is you're always happy to take new quality information and change your belief system, or not your belief system, but change what you previously thought to be true based on good quality information. I mean, many times in medicine, there's things that we have believed, maybe because out of dogma, or, somebody hasn't done the study. And then we get this landmark study that tells us we have to think differently. And then we're like, well, but that's just one study. And then 2 or 3 other people do the same thing. And we're like, okay, we got to think about this totally differently. We have to think about this disease differently. And unfortunately, that the way that science changes in response to information is often exploited by, people who believe in pseudoscience, right? Oh, well, science is always changing. But that's a good thing. That means that...
Remember that time they were wrong and they said that they were wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it means we evolve when we get more information. That's what you want. So...
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins uses that argument to say to argue that like atheism is fundamentally different than religion. Like, so people will sometimes call atheism religion and just say, you're just as fundamentalist and atheist as a fundamentalist Christian. There's no difference from you like in there. But what Richard Dawkins says is, well, no, because of somebody like a fundamentalist Christian or a fundamentalist Muslim or whatever would never change their mind if you were to argue, well, no matter how good the evidence, they'd never, like the whole idea of their faith is they'd never sway from it, right? Whereas typically people come to atheists from a position of skepticism and science, and so actually no, if really good evidence came about, I would change my mind. So that's why they're fundamentally different.
Yep.
That's his argument.
Yeah, I mean, one's a belief system and one's a science system.
Right.
I think that's really. But I mean, I have a Wonder Woman uterus as a tree topper, so
Nice.
You have a Wonder Woman uterus?
Yeah, someone made me a stuffed uterus with dressed like Wonder Woman with a cape, and that's my tree topper.
Like, does it have fallopian tubes? How do you know it's a loop?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like a uterus doesn't look like much.
gonna ask that
You'd need
question.
the fallopian tubes and ovaries to make it look
I don't
like.
think
It's
qualified
got a
to-
cervix with little stitches around it. It was made by an OBGYN who's a good seamstress, and she made me this
awesome.
Wonder Woman uterus, and one of the fallopian tubes holds a little lasso. It's awesome.
Nice.
You need to
And
publish
so
the
I
pattern to your blog.
It's somewhere on my blog. Actually, I used a picture of it for something, but that's our tree topper. We felt that was like really, the kids and I had a long talk about it, and we thought, we used to have a star. And then I was like, we should put the Wonder Woman uterus up there. And they're like, yeah, we should. So,
You should.
the Wonder Woman uterus is our tree topper.
That's excellent. I like that. I want one.
I have a flying spaghetti monster tree topper.
Where do you get this?
Made it out of wool.
Jeebus. What do I have? I have like a Santa. I have Santa. I'm lame. Oh man, I'm lame.
Yeah, you gotta get with it. Maybe Bigfoot. A Bigfoot tree
Yeah,
topper.
Bigfoot tree topper. That'd be awesome.
Well, you can see on the
I
webcam there,
think
she's
that would be-
knitting.
Yeah, I could knit
Yeah, you
something.
could knit.
Knit a
something.
flying spaghetti monster quite
You
easy.
could. Yeah.
I don't know. I think a whole tree with Bigfoot on would be actually pretty cool. Bigfoot and the Abominable Snowman. And I think it would be really cool. I would like that. I got to work on that.
For sure.
I got to go to a Christmas store tomorrow.
No, I want
Look for those.
I'd like a Bohr model of the atom. I think that's what I want to do. Yeah. Like the atom with the nucleus. Yeah.
Cool.
Bohr model. Quantum models kind of. How do you make an electron?
Yeah, I
cloud?
like
But-
the- I like
Cory yawned at the same time. I think he's bored.
Stop it.
No, I like the themed Christmas trees when people really go all out and it's all like mermaids or, abominable snowman. So I got to work on that. I got to work on my Bigfoot Christmas tree.
Why not?
For sure. Okay, so we've been about an hour.
All right.
We haven't even asked about your book yet.
Oh,
You're working on a
right.
book.
I am working on a book. Yeah, it's called The Vagina Bible. And the edits are done, and it's going to come out in August of 2019, Kensington Publishing. And it's everything I want every woman to know about the vulva and vagina, and really everything every man should know, too.
Excellent.
I want this so bad. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Coming here tonight, so
Yeah,
I
and
read,
it's...
Go ahead.
Pardon me?
Oh, I said coming here tonight. I was reading the bio that Cory had provided for us, and so then I started reading more into the difference in terminology between the vulva and the vagina, and getting into various articles about why it's important or why it's not important to and then I was like, oh crap, the podcast starts in 25 minutes. I got to get out of here. It's just a vortex of.
See how interesting it is? It's fascinating. It's what I get to do every day. It's everything I want women to know. So they'll have an ultimate resource guide, because when you think about all the misinformation that's online, they'll have somewhere they can go check. They can look up products. They can look up, I know all the questions people ask and the questions they want to ask, but are too afraid to. And so it's all in there.
So you have a chapter devoted to selling eggs, right? That go in there.
Yeah, right.
No, she's not worth the print.
Wrong book.
No.
Yeah. Actually, I already published the study on that, man. I proved
I know.
that jade eggs are a scam.
Yeah.
So I already done that. It's in print.
So
that's in evidence-based medicine.
I loved that one. It was so funny and so cheeky. I wish all academic articles were actually written that way with a little dash of sarcasm is totally necessary.
I really had to hold back because I felt that if I went too far, then, it might not get accepted. But I did have a lot of fun doing that. And I wasn't shocked at all that, just they'd made stuff up or somebody had, who knows
Right.
who. But I'm like, it's really curious that these jade eggs would be unknown to Chinese scholars, but known to a jade enthusiast in California.
That's so funny. No, it was awesome. I think you did have restraint. I think it's shown through. It made it better. That was a great piece. I love that one.
But that was fun. It was great. First time I ever got to work with an archaeologist. So I'm looking forward to more. We're going to maybe look at pubic hair removal patterns over the
I was totally going to ask you. Sorry, before we go, do you have any No, I kind of. How am I going to ask this? Any beef? I guess with women pubic hair removal industry, because that's a huge. You want to talk about a money making thing and risk of burns, infections,
et
cetera, et cetera.
Chapter on that. Certainly,
okay. Read the book.
47% of people have reported at least one kind of injury related to pubic hair removal, so it's not uncommon. I mean, it's a body modification, right? It's no different than getting a piercing. If you get your tongue pierced, you risk having enamel erosion and gum erosion, chip teeth. I mean, body modifications have risks, and we're all adults, and we should weigh our personal risk-benefit ratio and decide if it's for us or not. So I think that's kind of how I present it. Like, here are the facts. This is what you need to know. These are the things that are more likely to cause injury, and it's your body and it's your choice. So, but just also be careful. I talk a lot about the forces that sort of, push women in certain directions. And for example, we know that the first sort of naked image that people see, just like the first piece of misinformation you see online sort of skews you, the first sort of naked image that you see will also skew you to what you think is normal. So if your first experience is looking at porn, then you're going to start to think that that's kind of a normal, that's sort of the typical normal body versus seeing someone who's, not an actor who has, changed their body in a certain way for film. So
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a good book.
I hope so. It's a lot of information, man. It's like 500 pages, but I wanted every woman to have a textbook of her own.
When is it due to come out?
August. My due date is August. It's been a long gestation. Oh my God. August 2019, Kensington Publishing. And it's being printed. It's being published in Canada as well. And I'll be doing a Vagina Bible tour.
We'll have to have you on again when it comes out. Normally I like to buy a copy of the book from authors for a listener, but
not until next summer.
Not until next summer.
So,
that's right.
Approximate date of your Vagina Bible tour?
It's going to probably start August 2019. So I'm going to definitely be coming up to Canada for sure. I'm going to be coming to Winnipeg. So you guys are close by. So I'm sure I'll be doing a swing through. I'm basically going to go everywhere I have friends in Canada where I can crash on the couch.
Well,
I'll have to come sit in the studio, maybe even that.
Sure. Yeah. Working my way through.
Come sit at a mic.
Yeah, I've got friends in Saskatoon. So,
and you can crash on my couch anytime.
All right, there you go. And I got friends in Calgary and friends in Edmonton and friends in Vancouver. So I was going to work my way across the West.
For sure.
Do it.
Cool. Well, if you remember, reach out to CFI Canada. They might help you out in some other cities along the way and connecting you to some people who might be willing to host.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you so much. I will.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great chat.
All right.
We better get going to our next break. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much.
You guys have a nice evening. Nice talking with y'all.
Yeah, you too. Have a good night.
Keep fighting the good fight.
All right, I'll keep sticking my bat. Exactly. All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us keep the lights on, go become a patron at patreon.com/brainstorm podcast. You can hear the bonus half hour that we record every episode and get a shout out when you support the show. Become a patron for just $1 an episode at patreon.com/brainstorm podcast. Or you can support the show by ordering a t-shirt, mug or other gear from our store at caffeepress.ca/brainstorm podcast gear. If you can't afford to become a patron or buy gear, then why not give us a rating or write a review on iTunes or Stitcher? Every rating makes it easier for people to find us. Thanks for your support.
Welcome to Secular Soup. I'm Amy with a Y.
And I'm Amy with an I.
And we're just two blueberries floating in a bowl of tomato soup. Stay tuned for real talk about atheism, feminism, politics, parenting, and whatever the fuck else we want to talk about because this is our show. And get ready for a whole lot of motherfucking profanity. Buckle up, bitches. It's time to have some soup. I would tell them they can find us wherever podcasts are, but they're listening to this right now. So if you're that stupid that you're listening to this show and you don't know where to listen.
If we have to tell you how to find podcasts,
then you're hopeless.
All right. Feedback. We got a comment, only one comment on this, on the most thoughtful of platforms, YouTube.
Totally.
That's where you get the best comments.
The best.
It's from our one of our most recent ones, Midterms Brazil and the Far Right. And Maria Schick commented, I could never vote for any party that would give amnesty to millions of illegal aliens since we already tried amnesty in 1986 and it only encouraged millions more illegal aliens to come here illegally. Ooh. All right, so Maria is wrong. It wasn't amnesty that caused people to enter the U.S. I'm not sure if one can correlate the two things at all, but you can't draw causation. The argument has been made that closing the borders actually that was supposed to keep people out has actually made people stay in.
Oh, that revisionist history is so good. Everyone check it out.
That's right.
God, I love that guy.
Yeah, he's pretty good. So
smug, though.
It's true. He is awfully smug.
Sexy fro, though. It's so hard to decide.
That's right.
Cory loves Malcolm Gladwell's sexy
so
fro.
Awesome. Yeah,
Continue.
So awesome. Anyway, yeah, no, he, in that revisionist history, he covered the idea that the open borders that used to exist allowed people to cross back and forth regularly and work and pay taxes in the U.S. and take money back to Mexico, ultimately doing good for both economies and both countries.
And resulting in people who didn't stay permanently in the U.S.
Yeah. And closing the borders actually shut all that down and is hurting the economy and keeping people that apparently you don't want in your country in it. But whatever, keep promoting your BS. Yeah, okay.
What do they base it on? Like, what do they? Like, they don't cite anything.
Nope, it's just because they heard it on AM radio or Fox News. It's based it's not based in reality in any way.
There's a caravan.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. There's a really good piece in the Caravan. There's a couple of them now, I think, on the New York Times Daily podcast.
Yeah, they did a couple good ones. Yeah, it's
just interviews with the people. Like, what are they expect? These people are thinking, "Oh, we're going to go there. We're going to be open with open arms."
Yeah,
and, you can just see. You can really get a clear picture of how desperate they are and how what their intentions are. And anyway, it's very interesting.
Agreed. We have no new patrons, but Sarah and Troy sent money via PayPal. And that was very appreciated.
Thank you.
Anybody else who wants to send money through PayPal can do it at paypal.me/brainstormpodcast. Pardon me?
Do it.
Do it. That's right. Thanks to our top patrons, Destin Doesn't Suck That Much, Daryl Goosen, Aaron Young, William Driver, Positively Skeptical, The Flying Spaghetti Monster, Sauce Be Upon Him, If you want to become a top patron, that means you donate at the skeptic level, which is $5 per episode or higher. I don't have anything to plug, and I don't have any reviews. Anybody?
Nada.
I'm planning a Festivus, but I still have no details.
For this year?
Yeah, probably like January.
Slightly later.
Next
Yeah,
year.
there's no Festivus rules.
Well,
No, that's true.
December, people get bogged down with their own work Christmases and family Christmases and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm going to try to push it to January.
Cool. I like it. You know what? January needs something.
It's true.
Like, fuck. It's fucking cold.
What about Dave?
It's more like, me? No.
Nothing.
Not really. You know what? Like I say, I have projects happening, but nothing is like at a point of me plugging it at this point.
All right. Fair enough.
But yeah.
All right. We might as well cue the outro music then.
We might as well.
For all the things, you can check out the show notes on our website, brainstormblog.net, and on our hosting page, thebrainstormpodcast.com. Thanks to our financial supporters, Kayla, Janet, Kim, Stephanie, Zach, the Utah Outcasts, Will, Aaron, Daryl, Destin Sucks, Bob, Glenn, Destin Doesn't Suck That Much, Magnus, several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave, Positively Skeptical Rob, the Podunk Polymath, the Flying Spaghetti Monster, Sauce Be Upon Him, Freethinker 215, and Larry. If you want to join them and help the show grow, then you can do that at patreon.com/brainstormpodcast.
And you can think of an awesome name.
That's right.
Top those ones.
Or you can go and buy some stuff at tpublic.com/stores/brainstorm-podcast-gear. You can join us every 2 weeks on brainstormradio.net. Our next live show is December 7th, and our guest is going to be Regina Barber DeGraff.
Gina?
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I love Gina.
That's who I've got booked on the schedule anyway.
You know another guest?
She's the podcast host of Spark Science.
There we go.
Oh, cool.
And she's a friend of mine.
Awesome. I want to give a big thanks again to Dr. Gunter for joining us. You can find more of her stuff at drgenter.wordpress.com. Thank you, Lisa.
Me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Cory. What am I thanking you for?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Thanks, Dan.
Me?
Yes, you. Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
And thanks to Rene, though he's gone, for joining me tonight.
Yeah, no thanks.
Fuck you, Rene.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Dave, for our intro music. Thanks to Aaron Rabbi from Embrace the Void for doing our voiceover for our intro. You can find his stuff at voidpod.com. Thanks to Alex Capper-Murdoch for doing the voiceover for our ads, and thanks to Jason Camo for our outro music. You can find his stuff over at aloststateofmind.com. All music played is either with permission or under the SOCAN license to play. For more information on SOCAN, you can check out the music license info page on our website, brainstormblog.net. Make sure to tune in to brainstormafterhours.com for the bonus content before it goes patron only. Remember to give us a rating, a thumbs up, a favor on your podcatcher of choice. Join our Facebook group, like our page, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our subreddit, sign up for our newsletter, share the show, and spread the word. The more you share, comment, and like our stuff, the more it helps the show grow. Thanks for listening, and remember, the truth matters.
This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Cory, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.
Hello? Did you lose us?
Oh, no.
Oh no! My wonderful joke went to waste and everything. This is
I'll
terrible.
laugh double for you. It was good. I liked
it.
It.
Thank you.
Did the feed cut back there?
Yeah.
Oh.
Damn.
Well, hello.
You guys cut out, she said. How do we get her back?
I don't know if we do.
I heard something.
We can hear her, but she can't hear us.
Oh. That might actually be better for her, let's be honest.
You guys hear me?
Did it?
Yes.
Yep. Hello? Can you hear us?
She can't hear us.
Are you just muted? Where's the mute?
We are
Hello?
we're feeding out of here, so that's
It's not muted, but I'll try.
Hello? Nope.
I'll come see here.
Refresh
Oh,
it.
man.
I think it's cast. Let me just double check that though. Keep talking. Just talk. Someone talk.
Hello.
I'm not good at talking. I have nothing. I never have anything to say. Okay, maybe while we're waiting. Okay, I know. If I was Jen Gunter, if the equivalent of Jen Gunter and what I do, I would say the most important thing is if you get cancer, please follow what your doctor says to do. Like you don't have to do it blindly, and there may be options. But if you get breast cancer and they're like, you need chemotherapy and radiation and surgery, and you go, nah, I'm going to take herbal supplements. Please
And
don't do that.
aromatherapy.
I hate it's the worst thing ever seeing the patients come back in a few years later and they're just so messed up. They are it's not curable anymore. They have no hope and they're in pain, and just Google fungating breast cancer or don't, but I just don't do that. I don't know. That's what I would write the blog about, because I don't know.
I think we've said it before. The problem is because that kind of treatment it's fun and it's
yeah, of course, because there's side effects. There's side effects to so many medications. But Jesus Christ, it's your life. It's your life.
The actual treatment isn't fun and
no, it's not
warm
fun.
and fuzzy.
Well, on the other hand, I happen to think people who work in cancer care are very nice. Okay, and they will be nice to you. So please show up for your treatments when you're supposed to. Listen to what the doctor says. It says you got to start this treatment and be done within 60 days or whatever. Do it. I don't know. Don't book your trip to Aruba. Just do your. I don't know.
I could see how there's something comforting about being able to pay, let's say a holistic nutritionist or something who's going to be along with you every step of the way, and they're giving you constant advice, and you can come in and bring your feelings. And
first of all, we have social workers, who will do that, and you can hire a shrink to do that with you too if you really want to pay. But yeah, we have free social workers that you can work through your feelings with. And also,
okay, I'm back.
Can you hear us?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, what did you switch to, Cory?
Again.
I switched to Google Hangouts.
Okay, we're in Google Hangouts now.
Oh, we're on webcam too.
So I just want to point out that was not the Amazing Dave's fault. that was the not so amazing Microsoft's fault. Or no, the not so amazing Google's fault.
Turn it. I'm not in yet.
Google's the worst.
Come on, Cory.
Google. Actually, I think Amazon's the worst.
Are they?
Yeah, they're even worse right now.
What about an iPhone factory? That's worse than Apple.
That's
the worst.
pretty bad too. They're all bad.
All right, I guess I'm cut. I'm not in.
You know who's the worst? It's Cory.
That's right.